Hello and welcome back to my channel. I haven't made an INTP video in a while, so that's what I'm gonna do. I also said I was gonna make this video in my last video, so here it is. I wanted to discuss emotions in particular and being an INTP because you know the usual stereotypes. Oh my gosh, INTPs don't really feel anything. ISTPs don't feel anything. TI DOMs just don't really feel much. And that's not true, at least in the way that a lot of people would obviously like stereotype it to be. Emotional struggles, I think, when it comes to being a TI DOM are, definitely valid, and in a way that's sort of what I'm going to talk about as an initial starting point, despite being a person who, is not really that emotionally intelligent to begin with. I have recognized that there are things that do make me, I guess you can say, emotional, despite the fact that I don't even like saying that myself. But, here it is. So, as somebody that kind of struggles with their own personal emotions, because if you just look at like the whole cognitive stack of an INTP, the very last function at the bottom, the eighth function for an INTP would be introverted feeling. So that's specifically what I'm saying in terms of how I struggle, with my own personal feelings. It's not that they're not there. I just don't know how to translate them, I guess, in that, introverted feeling, sort of way. So when I try to explain to a lot of people that I don't really feel much or I don't really have like much emotions, they obviously find it like very alien, because to most people, I guess their feelings are very, important and close to them. And I'm a pretty cynical and pessimistic person. So there is a lot in me that wants to, agree with that like sentiment, but it's still something that, I kind of struggle with, because I don't see the things that I guess even emotionally react to as something that's actually like quote unquote emotional. It just makes sense. So I guess here's the thing that I've noticed. One particular thing that does get me emotional is just when I find people stupid. And this is probably true for like, a lot of people, but when I explain something in my very like TI, like introverted thinking, sort of way, from like point A all the way to Z and that kind of stuff, and it's just this person just can't understand it. And it's just so obvious to me. And I have an explanation for it. So I do get emotional when people just cannot like see what I think is like crystal clear knowledge like out and about, and there's just like no other way to like explain something. And then what I think is dumb is when people use this and say, oh, see, you're more emotional than you actually say. But I just think it's rational that you would react to stupidity with, such like hostile or like negative like emotion to it, because stupidity is stupidity and it doesn't make any sense. So that doesn't mean that I still don't struggle with like emotions in general, just because I, react to things that I think are like very much stupid. And it's like, if I'm explaining this like so many times and it just can't get through to them, it feels like I'm talking to like a brick wall. I just, yeah, it makes me kind of like, okay, like when I perceive something to be illogical, it does make me emotional, I guess, to like a certain extent. Like it can reach that point, especially when I'm like talking about like a certain topic, which is why I don't really like talking to like other people, I guess, sometimes in a way for like insight, because if they just don't get it, then it's like, yeah, it connects back to, I guess, like my inferior FE, my struggles with, extroverted feeling. So the second thing that I want to talk about is, I guess I can get emotional when I talk to certain people. I guess like in connection to finding other people stupid when they just don't understand like my logical framework, is, I guess, basically, I don't like people that are bossy, honestly. And this in a way makes me want to like retreat to like other people, because like obviously not everybody's like bossy in a sense, but I know everybody has like their own like sales pitch and whatnot. So I think this is pretty much like an NTP like struggle in general. It's kind of hard for me to talk to people without seeing it as like some form of like debate, in a sense, because like there are just some things that I think are right, and there are just some things that I think are wrong and don't make sense. So when I talk to like a particular person and they're trying to like influence me in like some sort of way, like I just perceive them as like bossy in my head, and like, you're so annoying, like stop trying to tell me like what to do. Or it's like, oh, I'm just like sharing an opinion. Well, like, your opinion is stupid. Your opinion is stupid. How about that? It doesn't make any sense, and I'm just like not gonna like tolerate and like deal with it. So I'm not the best person necessarily when it comes to like getting along with like other people, because like, people will just say we can agree to disagree. And obviously, yeah, in a sense I can agree to just disagree because I can just not engage with like, another person. But it's like I hate coming across like other people and just like knowing that they have like their own agenda, knowing that they just have like their own, this or that. And everybody has their own agenda. This is what I'm doing on my channel. This is what everybody else is doing on their channel, or whatever they decide to, like share with like other people. So I think emotional connection, in a sense, like it does make me emotional, because I get into like my feelings about it like as much as I can anyway. And I start thinking like, why do I even bother? Like, why do I want friends? Why do I want a girlfriend? Why do I want like, this or that? And it's just like, it's just another person that I'm gonna have to like curate in some form, or like, program in a sense, so I can like get them on like my side. And I can just openly admit that like this is essentially what like everybody is doing. So oftentimes a lot of like interactions with other people, like in general, like I don't know, I guess like talking about like human relationships, it like low key like gets on my nerves. It like low key like gets like, like it gets like under my skin, and I hate it so much. And it's like I feel like I'm just cursed to do it anyway, because I'm a human being, and unfortunately that means being a part of like a social species. Unless I say fuck it to all and just like, I don't know, do that whole Buddhist temple life and just like say goodbye to like worldly pleasures, I guess. But oh look, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm vaping. I'm drinking. Fucking love beer, by the way. But anyway, uh, yeah. I guess those are like two main things that like I wanted to share. It's like when I react negatively to stupidity, what I perceive as like stupidity, people are like, "Oh, see, you have a fleshed out like, like fully developed like emotional world like everybody else." But I'm just like, "No, I'm just reacting in a sense to like what I would think a rational person would react when they hear, that's something else that's like stupid." And I do get very emotional when I try my best to be emotional, obviously. But this is what I don't like about like my own emotions. And like I get emotional and frustrated over the fact that I just cannot understand my emotions and frustrations like really well. And people are like, "Oh, you're doing it," but I'm just like, that's the point. I just see emotions as basically something that like you perform, and that like, you act. They don't actually come from like a deeper part or like a core of me. It's just like, oh, it's like, what are emotions? They're dramatic. They're attention seeking, for the sake of like being attention seeking. In that sense, I'm not trying to contradict my previous video talking about how like I think it's dumb when people say you're attention seeking. I do think it's dumb when people say that like you're attention seeking, but like, at least like you can still get attention in a way without, necessarily being like super dramatic about it, obviously. And I guess with like emotions, there's just no way to draw someone's attention emotionally unless you're gonna like, perform some sort of like circus act, because oh my gosh, you're so emotional. Like all those times we've ever cried in our lives, all those times we like, I don't know, like laughed hysterically, even if not necessarily trying to like draw someone else. Like you see someone laughing, you're gonna notice, obviously. Like you hear it, and then you might wonder, what are they laughing about? What do they think is like so funny? And what I don't like about emotions basically is that it feels like, people pay attention to you when you have them. And I guess like, yeah, kind of like what I said, they're attention seeking in that sense. There's just no way to have like emotions out and about without somebody reacting with like their own energy. And I hate that. And I guess like a lot of the reasons like why I struggle having like emotions and stuff is because like, this whole like inferior sort of like FE thing. And what I don't like about like inferior FE, basically what I don't like about like FE in general, is that like that also comes with like its own stereotypes, where people say that like, oh my gosh, if you're like an INTP, you have to be shy or whatever. Like maybe that's true for the case of like some INTPs, but I actually hate that like notion. I hate that like rhetoric, because like just because I'm not talking, that doesn't mean I'm not shy. I just don't have the, like energy to do it. I just don't have the energy to pretend that like, I don't know, whatever stupid thing you might say is like, worth hearing, when I thought to myself, no, that was like, incredibly fucking stupid. And it's like, these are the thoughts that just like nobody will like admit. I'm sure there are people who think the same way of me. Every single time they hear something that I say, they probably just wish I would just shut the fuck up. There are so many people too, when I hear what they say, I just wish they would, like shut the fuck up. So emotions are basically the core problem, as like my high like TI framework would like see, because it clouds judgment. It clouds, like this or that. But I do have feelings of like uneasiness. I guess maybe you could even just say anxiety. I don't fucking know. but it's just like, like my own feelings give me anxiety, and that's what I don't like. Like what makes me emotional and what I don't like about myself when I like perceive these emotions that like I may or may not have is I'm going to act as stupid as these other people that I see that are, like willingly showing and like, display, emotion. So basically like the roundabout thing, and maybe this is like a very like INTP, ISTP like problem. Maybe not, I don't know, but at least like maybe like higher in, ramification for somebody like an INTP or like an ISTP. My own emotions get me so emotional. Not what they are, but just like the notion that like, I could have them. The notion that like, if I were to like lower and, be part of the crowd and I guess like show some sort of like FE vulnerability, that low key scares the shit out of me. I guess I feel like I'm gonna lose myself entirely if I like drop all of like my logic and my way of like explaining things, and it's just, yeah, and it's very like uncomfortable to go through. So I get emotional over not understanding my emotions, like very well. I don't understand other people's emotions very well because I just think you can say something that makes sense and be emotional, or you can be emotional and say something that just like doesn't make any sense. I'm not looking for your emotions. I don't care to like read the energy of how you say it. I'm just going to look for like logical consistency in the things of what you say, and I'm just going to like weigh it together as if like it makes, any sort of sense. So emotions are very, alien to me, unless you're talking shit, I guess, because I can understand talking shit about anything, talking shit about emotions, talking shit about like the whole world, but just like, who wants to feel? Seriously, who wants to feel? And even like taking that first step, I'm already getting uncomfortable. That's what I mean. Like I'm already getting uncomfortable the moment like I'm trying to perceive, okay, what things make me vulnerable? What things like, incite this sort of like passionate reaction if like hypothetically if it were to go over the line, I might get myself like in prison for it hypothetically. I made a video previously before this. That video obviously talking about like anger and whatnot. And it's just like, they're just not comfortable things to like think about. Like I deal with them, I acknowledge them, but it's just like this is my problem with like my emotions. Not the emotions themselves, being able to see those emotions, the potentiality of those emotions, and all this kind of stuff that I feel like I don't necessarily want to say like wouldn't be able to handle, because I think, a lot of like antisocial things all the time that, I don't act upon, and they must be like, I guess you could call them like crimes of passion if I were to like, actually do them. But it's just like they just tire me out, bro. Emotions make me feel apathetic. That's why I only feel like one or two things. I either feel like pissed off and annoyed, or I just don't feel, you know, anything whatsoever. So, yeah, that's all it is when it comes to like, I guess like emotions, like the recognition of emotions, the fact that like emotions even exist, that gets me very emotional, and it's very ironic. But yeah, there you go.